تجربة مماثلة لتجربة العراق.
Good afternoon on this October 28th. I'm Yumna Naufal. These are today's headlines. Lebanese soldiers take control of Tripoli after 3 days of fierce fighting that killed at least 16 and forced thousands to flee. Former Prime Minister Saad Hariri says Lebanon must disengage from the civil war destroying Syria. And the Tunisian secular Nida Tunis party emerges as the main winner in the parliament election, pushing Islamists to second place. An uneasy calm has returned to Tripoli, and people are returning to their neighborhoods after the Lebanese army retook control of the city after about 5 days of bloody clashes. The fighting ended yesterday after the army seized a mosque used as a stronghold by the rogue gunmen. Militants inspired by the Islamic State group attempting to create an emirate clashed with the Lebanese army over the weekend, leaving 42 people dead and around 150 wounded. Among the fatalities were 23 militants, 11 soldiers, and 8 civilians. At least 162 men have been arrested in an army crackdown on gunmen in the north. The Islamist group Jabhat al-Nusra has said it has suspended the previously announced plans to execute Lebanese hostages after mediation plans from Salafist preachers. The clerics allegedly brokered a deal to end the violence that shook Tripoli over the weekend, although the army insists that no truce has been reached. In a statement posted on Twitter, the front claimed to have suspended the execution of Ali Bazzal, one of the 27 soldiers and policemen held hostage since August, in return for restoring calm to Tripoli and safe exit for the militant. At Riyadh al-Salah, the families of the captive soldiers and policemen continue their protests to demand more efforts from the authorities to free the hostages after a new video picturing the abducted servicemen was posted by the Nusra yesterday. Speaking on the protest site, they warned the Prime Minister that they will escalate the protest if additional steps to free the hostages were not taken. Former Prime Minister Saad Hariri said Lebanon must disengage from the civil war destroying Syria and that the country will be ripped apart if sectarian plots are allowed to continue. Hariri described the recent incidents of violence in the Bekaa Valley, Tripoli, Akkar, Minya, Dinya and elsewhere as samples of the huge fire in Syria. His statement comes as calm is restored in the city of Tripoli after 5 days of violent clashes between the army and Islamist militants. The Future movement leaders calling on Sunnis to remain loyal to the Lebanese state and army, rejecting the idea of a Sunni revolution. And also commenting on the recent events, Christians have the duty to help Muslims confront attacks by terrorist groups in the Levant. These are the words of Maronite Patriarch Bashar al-Rai addressing his country from Australia. He stressed that Islamist militants are tarnishing the image of Islam. The developments that the world is witnessing, especially in the Middle East, are not related to humanity or ethics in any way, Rai said. And he said this on the second leg of his Australian tour. The terrorist acts carried out by certain people in the name of Islam are not related to Muslim or Islam at all, but are the results of regional and international interests. Lebanon's economy is to grow by no more than 2 or 2.5% in 2015 if it does not resolve its political problems as it struggles to cope with the fallout from the war in Syria, according to the economy minister. Lebanon's economy has been hit hard by Syria's civil war, which has sparked gun battles, bombings and kidnappings in the small Mediterranean country and hurt key sectors like tourism. It has also forced more than 1.5 million Syrians to take refuge inside the borders. Economy and Trade Minister Alain Hakim said the country needed $2.5 billion to start addressing the economic impact of the Syrian refugees, whose presence has strained infrastructure and led to increased competition for jobs. Lebanon has also been without a president since May 25th because lawmakers have been unable to agree on a new one. Turkey cannot be expected to send troops to defend the besieged Syrian border town of Kobani, and only Iraqi Kurdish Peshmerga fighters and Syria's own moderate opposition can still save it, according to Prime Minister Ahmed Davutoglu. U.S. warplanes have been bombing ISIS positions near Kobani for weeks, but airstrikes alone will not be enough to repel the insurgents. Davutoglu said that Kobani on Turkey's southeastern border has been encircled by ISIS fighters for more than a month, and the battle to save it has become a test of the U.S.-led coalition's strategy for halting the radical Sunni Muslim group's advance. Turkish officials have rebuffed international criticism over their reluctance to do more to help Kobani's beleaguered Kurdish defenders, whom they say are linked to the militant Kurdistan Workers' Party, which has fought a decades-long insurgency against the Turkish state. And the Pentagon has revised its estimate of the cost of the U.S. air war in Iraq and Syria, saying the price tag for the campaign against the Islamic State group comes to about $8.3 million a day. Since airstrikes began on August 8, the campaign, which has involved about 6,000 sorties by U.S. and allied aircraft, has cost $580 million, according to Pentagon spokesman Commander Bill Urban. The Defense Department has previously put the average daily cost of the military operation at more than $7 million a day. Independent analysts say the Defense Department is underestimating the genuine cost of the war effort, which began in mid-June with the deployment of hundreds of U.S. troops to secure the American embassy in Baghdad and to advise the Iraqi army. Bringing humanitarian aid to areas controlled by the Islamic State group before the harsh winter sets in a major challenge for NGOs. Well, Rashid Kharikov, the Geneva director for the UN Office or the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, says as many as 800,000 refugees are in urgent need of shelter, with many more needing assistance for the winter.
1.8 million people have been displaced since January 2014. Half of them are children. Some have settled with friends and family, but hundreds of thousands more have been forced to shelter in unfinished buildings, public spaces and informal settlements, unfit to host people who fled with very few belongings. As a harsh winter is coming, and we saw that it is very cold in the evenings and nights, and we saw the rains that are coming to be very frequent and very strong. And 800,000 people are in urgent need of shelter, and many more are in need of winterization assistance.
The situation is not uniform, and it differs from one place to another. There are places where the extremist groups, whether it's ISIS or otherwise, are preventing humanitarian assistance from going in. There are places in which they are trying to take advantage of this humanitarian assistance, and there are places where humanitarian assistance goes to those who need it through local community. So this is a challenge that we need to address, and this is a challenge that the international community as a whole needs to address, about how humanitarian assistance can be extended and can be provided to those who are in areas that are under the control of terrorist groups or extremist groups that the international community does not accept contacts with.
Coming up next, U.S. federal health officials revamp guidelines for doctors and nurses returning home from treating Ebola patients in Africa. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching the 4:20 o'clock news on Future Television. Tunisian secular Nida Tunis Party is emerging as the main winner in the 217-seat parliament election after Sunday's vote. Preliminary results showed Nida Tunis, led by Beji Kad Essebsi, that won 83 seats. The North African nation's leading Islamist party, Ennahda, is in second place with 68 seats. Among the other parties, the provisional figure showed Free Patriotic Union and the Popular Front with 17 and 12 seats respectively. Essebsi said on Sunday night that they were positive indications Nida Tunis were ahead. Ennahda's head acknowledged late on Monday that his party had finished second. Lutfi Zitoun, the senior Ennahda official, conceded defeat and reiterated the party's call for the formation of a unity government, including Ennahda, in the interest of the country, regarded as the birthplace of the Arab Spring. Russia announced plans to recognize elections scheduled for next weekend by rebels in eastern Ukraine, defying the government in Kiev and indicating that the crisis, which began nearly a year ago, is far from abating. Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov announced Moscow's plans, saying, quote, "We expect the elections will go ahead as agreed, and we will of course recognize the results." Two pro-Russian separatist regions, the self-proclaimed People's Republics of Donetsk and Luhansk, are holding polls on Sunday to elect leaders and parliaments exactly 1 week after Kiev completed general elections, which the two regions refused to participate in. U.S. federal health officials have revamped guidelines for doctors and nurses returning to the country from treating Ebola patients in West Africa, stopping short of controversial mandatory quarantines being imposed by some U.S. states. Thomas Frieden, the director of the U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention, known as the CDC, called for voluntary home quarantine for people at the highest risk for Ebola infection, but said most medical workers returning from the 3 countries at the center of the epidemic would require daily monitoring without isolation. New York and New Jersey are among the states imposing mandatory quarantines on returning doctors and nurses amid fears of the virus spreading outside of West Africa, where it has killed nearly 5,000 people. Emergency workers in Mesa, Arizona saved a stallion today. This is a heartwarming story named Stormy after the poor horse fell into an area in the swimming pool. Paramedics and rescue team members from the Mesa Fire and Medical Department worked with Dr. Skylar Bielny, a veterinarian, to tranquilize the horse and then hoist him from the pool. The horse was unharmed in the incident. Taylor Swift, the mega star, played a special gig on a private New York City rooftop to celebrate the release of her new album, 1989, titled after her birth year. The star handpicked the lucky audience members for the event, titled Taylor Swift's 1989 Secret Session with iHeartRadio from her fan club. She kicked off proceedings with the aptly named Welcome to New York, following with Out of the Woods Style and Blank Page. The world-famous LED tower lights on the Empire State Building were synchronized to the pop star's performance.
It's been waiting for you. Welcome to New York. Welcome to New York. It's a new soundtrack. I can dance to this beat forevermore. The lights are so bright, but they never blind me. Welcome to New York.
I've got a long list of ex-lovers. They'll tell you I'm insane, but I've got a blank space, baby, and I'll write your name.
Nice to meet you. Where you been? I could show you incredible things. Magic, madness, heaven, sin. Shake it up, 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 shake it up. You got to shake it up, shake it up.
That marks the end of our bulletin for today. Now for a reminder of our top stories. Lebanese soldiers take control of Tripoli after 3 days of fierce fighting that kill at least 16 and force thousands to flee. Former Prime Minister Saad Hariri says Lebanon must disengage from the civil war destroying Syria. And the Tunisian secular Nida Tunis party emerges as the main winner in the parliament election, pushing Islamists to second place. Those are your Tuesday headlines live on Future Television. From Yumna Naufal and everybody here at Future, take care.
لن نكون على رأس تجربة مماثلة